Hey, this is Coach Anderson from Mississippi Public Broadcasting Online, U.S. History from 1877 to present. Today we're going to pick up with unit number 12 and lesson number 9, Latinos in Modern America. Well, and over the course of unit 12, we've been looking at a little bit, of course, of the civil rights movement with African Americans, of course, fighting for equal rights. We're going to look at the women's liberation movement, of course, for women fighting for equal rights. Now we're going to turn attention, of course, to Latinos in modern America and what they do in their community, of course, to gain some semblance of equal rights also. What we're going to do, of course, is start with the unit focus question. And remember, unit focus questions we will not address at this time, but we will tell you what they are, and we will address them at the end of the unit. Identify and describe Kennedy and Johnson's domestic and foreign policy goals, trials, and accomplishments. Identify the origin, major players, strategies, and accomplishments of the modern civil rights movement. Describe the impact of the Vietnam War had on American life and politics, and what impact did the civil rights movement have on underserved and underrepresented groups in America. So what we'll do, of course, is look at those, and we want those to guide us as we go through the lessons. Now, the vocabulary, go ahead and take out your journals, write down these terms, of course, and define them, and we'll address as many of them as we can as they come up, of course, in the lesson. The lesson focus questions we will address at the end of the lesson. This is what factors encouraged Mexicans to move north to the United States at the turn of the 20th century, and discuss the Latino civil rights movement in the United States. Do now activity. What we want you to do is take out your journals and write down the following statement or question. This is what part of the United States has primarily been the location for Mexican immigration to the United States, and why has that been the primary location? So at this time, go ahead, write that topic down and mull over your thoughts, and we'll be back on the other side and talk about it in a few minutes. All right, you should have enough time, of course, that you were able to go through and look at that journal topic. And this is what part of the United States has primarily been the location for Mexican immigration to the United States, and why? Well, the southern part of the United States of America, of course, has been the location for most immigration, especially from Mexico. We're also going to find that when you look at Florida, we have an abundance of Cubans that are coming in. We're going to find that that's going to be one of the areas. So the southern states typically have been the states, of course, where most immigration, especially Mexican immigration, has taken place. And the reason being is because of proximity, or how close they are, of course, to the borders of the United States of America, or the ease of access. So when you look at Mexican immigrants and they come to places primarily like Arizona, there's work in Arizona in terms of various agricultural jobs that they can do in terms of harvesting. They also come to places like California, same deal once again. And then they come to places like Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, once again, because you have industries here that make use of that labor. All right, we're going to start with the history of Mexican immigration. Mexican immigration to the United States ramped up after 1900 because of economic and political struggles encountered by Mexicans. By 1920, more than 500,000 Mexicans had immigrated to find jobs in the United States. More came with the creation of the Bracero program to work in the fields during World War II. They were encouraged to come to the United States of America to work in the Bracero program so that they could help harvest the crops, of course, in places like Arizona and California. And the reason being is because by them doing that, the war effort, of course, is supported. Mexican immigrants have faced discrimination and poverty in America. When times were difficult, they became targets of repatriation or deportment. So as long as they were needed, it was fine. But when they weren't needed, of course, we're going to find that nativist sentiment in America is going to take over. And nativist means that they want the country to be for native-born people. Cuban and Puerto Rican immigration increased during the 1900s, with Puerto Ricans gaining American citizenship in 1917, and the Cubans escaping communism and Castro in 1959, and that causing, of course, a great amount of refugees escaping Cuba so they can come to the United States of America. The fight for Mexican equality. Two organizations were created to fight for Mexican civil rights, the GI Forum and the League of United Latin American Citizens. The GI Forum fought to gain rights for Latino veterans and was headed by Dr. Hector P. Garcia, and LULAC fought to end discrimination and segregation that Latino children faced in public schools. Here is a picture of Dr. Hector P. Garcia. He was a veteran and the founder of the GI Forum to protect Latino veteran rights. And then we also have an organization called the United Farm Workers. And the United Farm Workers were created to fight for better wages and benefits for Mexican farm workers, and it was created by Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, who would become two champions, of course, in the Mexican community. La Raza Unida was created by Jose Angel Gutierrez. It was created as a political party to advance the issues faced by American citizens, Mexican Americans, like access to banks, access to bilingual education, and to promote Mexican culture. The Chicano movement also sought to bolster Mexican culture and pride throughout the Southwest, particularly in California, by creating murals depicting Mexican culture, influenced by Jose Orozco and Diego Rivera. Here are some, is Dolores Huerta, and on the right, the man most associated with the United Farm Workers, Cesar Chavez. Here are two Mexican flags, of course, that represent, one of them, the one on the right represents their Aztec heritage. So when you look at these Mexican flags, these are the symbols of the Mexican fight for civil rights in America. Here you have some Chicano murals. The one on the left, I think, is in San Diego, California, and the one on the right, of course, is in San Francisco. And these pop up a whole lot during the 1970s, these murals that depict, Mexican culture. Lesson focus questions. What factors encouraged Mexicans to move north to the United States at the turn of the 20th century, and discuss the Latino civil rights movement in the United States? Well, the simple answer to number one, of course, would be jobs, but we can give it to you in a couple of factors. Number one, the turmoil that was caused by the Mexican Revolution in 1910, to fill factory jobs in the American Southwest during World War II, and also, of course, agriculture jobs. The Bracero movement, Bracero program, which recruited them as farm labor, economic opportunity that was available to them in Mexico, and ancestral familiarity where some were tied to the land taken from Mexico because of the Mexican cession. So when you look at those things, those are reasons why a lot of Mexicans gravitate to that area in the Southwest. Lesson focus question, discuss the Latino civil rights movement in the United States. The Latino civil rights movement was born out of the mistreatment and targeting of the Mexicans when economic times got hard in the United States. Mexicans were often the target for repatriation when economic hardships hit, like the Great Depression. The Mexican cession caused lingering historical mistrust between Mexicans and their English-speaking neighbors. And the Latino civil rights movement centered around desegregation, fair treatment, access to governance, end of discrimination, fair wages, just like the African-American civil rights movement did. The people most responsible for advancing Latino civil rights, Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta from the United Farm Workers, Jose Angel Gutierrez. Primarily, they advanced civil rights through nonviolence and the use of the law. So when you look at the movement, it mirrors, just like the women's liberation movement, it mirrors the civil rights movement. And that gets us to one of those unit focus questions that we'll talk about in a few minutes. This is Coach Anderson from Mississippi Public Broadcasting Online, U.S. History from 1877 to present. Remember what we always tell you, don't take my word for it, do your own research and draw your own conclusion. And with that, we'll see you next time.